Thanks for joining me on the Peace in Parenting podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the Peace in Parenting podcast. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Michelle, and I'm all by myself today talking about something that has come up recently, and it's the idea of choices. And before we get to that, I just wanted to say, for those of you who don't know, I have a book, and the book is called Unpunished. And that book is partially my story into connected parenting, my journey, my trials and tribulations, my, struggle with perfectionism, and then ideas around connected parenting and how that might work in your house. It's a short read. It's an easy book to get through. You can find it at unpunishedbook.com. But if you're looking for Audible, you can find that on Amazon, just under Unpunished. All right. Let's talk about this idea of choices. And choices have often been touted as a great way to parent, to give your child lots of choices. Then they don't feel as if we're being so controlling. I think that's the idea, is that if we give our children more choices, then we are giving them more control, right? We're giving them more autonomy, or hopefully that is what we're kind of looking for, right? But sometimes I see parents using choices that aren't really choices. So for instance, the kid who hates vegetables and you can't get him to eat his vegetables, and you think, oh, well, would you like broccoli or Brussels sprouts, knowing that the child doesn't like either of those, isn't really a choice, because you're just saying, I'm going to give you the vegetables no matter what anyway. And I'm going to give you this choice that isn't going to feel like a choice because you don't like either of them. And so is that giving the child choice and autonomy and a place to really, have a say-so in things? Or is it just the parent's feeble attempt at giving the child a choice that doesn't really make sense? And I think if we're real honest with ourselves, oftentimes we end up giving the choice that benefits us on both ends, right? We're still getting the vegetables to the child. Now, of course, we're not doing this maliciously, right? We're doing this because we want our kid to eat vegetables, of course. But maybe that's not the way to get our kid to eat vegetables. I also hear often that kids who have ADHD or are neurodivergent in some way, have a diagnosis, that this is one of the ways in which experts in that field have told parents to help kids feel as if they have more autonomy. And I think actually that's so true. But there's nuance in there. And the nuance is if that choice actually becomes a real choice, meaning that the child feels as if they get to actually choose something, and they get to choose something that they want. So a good place that I think is a great place to give a child choice and autonomy is to say, do you want to take a shower? And parents will be like, well, hygiene that's not a negotiable. You got to take your shower. But hygiene is negotiable. And our child, sure, eventually they have to take a shower, but do they have to take a shower every night? Do they have to take the shower when we ask them to do it? Don't we want them to learn, what it feels like to be dirty? I've talked about this before, what it feels like to be clean, how to make good choices for their body. Aren't we trying to teach them independence? We're not giving them enough choices like those choices where they actually can fail, where they actually might choose the wrong thing. I think that's the other thing too. Parents really don't want their child to choose the wrong thing, so they don't give them choices around things where they can fail. But I think actually that's an important piece of parenting. That's an important piece of life. And if we've been over controlled and over, guided kind of, then do we learn the things that we need to learn inside of our lives, like the showering or eating, or it can be many things, homework. Do we learn how to navigate those things? Or Are we forced into navigating them in the way in which our parents believe is best? But does that A, give us a real choice? And B, does that allow us to do ultimate learning in our lives? I think choices are awesome. I posted recently, though, I didn't like choices, but I meant it. And I went on to explain why. I meant it because, I don't like the choices that don't feel like choices. Another one can be, do you want to go to bed now or do you want to go to bed in 10 minutes? Well, of course, the kid's going to say 10 minutes, but the kid doesn't want to go to bed at all. So in all this too, is it better just to say, it's time to go to bed, period. It's time to go to bed. Sure, that's a limit, right? We can have limits. We don't have to give kids choices about everything. We can say it's time to go to bed. That's the limit. But we give a kid this false sense of choice. And I think sometimes too, we offer this choice under the guise that if I give them the choice, then they're not going to be upset because I gave them the choice. I said, you want to go to bed now or in 10 minutes? How can you be upset when I gave you 10 more minutes? Well, they're upset because they don't want to go to bed. And can that be another choice as our kids, get older? Do you want to go to bed? Are you ready to go to bed? Do you feel tired? And how does a kid learn that thing unless they're given opportunities to be too tired sometimes and wake up feeling icky because they stayed up too late? And when do we begin giving our child that choice? I know I began giving Pia that choice. She's my night owl. When she was like 9, 10, and just saying, okay, you got this. I want you to decide when you need to go to bed. Oh, she was cranky for a few weeks. She was. And it made my life a lot harder. But after that, there was no bedtime struggle. There was no bedtime discussion. There was no bedtime because she figured out when she needed to go to bed and when she needed to wake up. I've never since then. Well, Esme's always been an early to bed. She likes to go to bed at, 9:30. She's not a night owl. As she's gotten older, she stays out later with her friends and stuff. Yes. But, in those from about 7 on, she just really wanted to go to bed. And that was just the way she was. So, but Pia would be the kid that would stay up all night. She wanted that autonomy. But she's figured it out. And so we don't have to have a bedtime because now it's on them. And I've never had to, after about 7 or 8, I've never had to wake my kids up. I've never had to struggle. I mean, we struggled in the morning with disconnection. And so we used lots of play, but we didn't struggle to get up. We didn't struggle to, get ready. It was kind of on them. I put more responsibility on them and I gave them actually organically more choices. I didn't really call them choices and I didn't really use them. That's why I think choices also can be manipulative. Like I'm trying to give the choice to get my kid to pick the right answer because I want to avoid an upset. Do you want to leave the, playground after you swing 5 times or do you want to leave the playground now? Or, it feels manipulative to me. It doesn't feel like choice to me. So I think being really careful and mindful about what are you using choice for? And what is your outcome? What are you looking for in these choices? And how can you actually give your children choices that feel like they have some control? Because kids want control. We all want control, especially over our own bodies and our own lives. We want control. We all should want control over our own lives and bodies at a very young age. It's autonomy, right? Everybody is born with autonomy. We as parents take that autonomy away. Instead of allowing space for autonomy, we do this thing where we want to control, we want to crunch, and we want to push our kids into doing what we want them to do. We want to impose our will on our children. And I think choice plays into that in a very sneaky way sometimes. Not all the time. I'm not talking about all choices. I'm talking about what I'm talking about, right? These choices that don't really give our kids control. And I think it's important to give our children control and not take it. We don't own them. We can't control them. We can try. We can force things. We can be manipulative, which I think some of these choices are. But isn't it better if we start at a very young age, offloading the control to them? And as I'm thinking about this, maybe this is true too. Like when they're infants, we're in control of everything. When they eat, when they get changed, we have to be. It's survival, right? And maybe it's hard for us to transition out of that and into actual childhood from, infancy into childhood. Maybe that transition for us is hard and confusing. And we still feel like somebody said in my Instagram, well, hygiene is non-negotiable. It certainly is. Hygiene is non-negotiable when we have an infant who cannot take care of their own hygiene. But as a child is more and more able to take care of themselves, isn't it their responsibility? And isn't it part of what they are learning and developmentally part of what they are starting to navigate? Isn't that what we want? Aren't we supposed to scaffold? Aren't we supposed to let go of those controls and those constraints as they start to walk, as they start to talk, as they start to be able to feed themselves, as they start to be able to bathe themselves, as they start to be able to notice when they're tired? I had these friends. They were lovely, lovely, lovely people. And they had a baby. And that baby, they didn't really have it on this huge schedule. And maybe this is part of temperament for this child too. I'm not sure. Maybe it could be. But they let the child kind of sleep when the child wanted to sleep. And they got up with the child when that child needed to get up. And they were just so mellow about it. And I remember back in the day, Esme was like a toddler at the time. I was thinking, oh, heck no, I couldn't do that. I need my kids in bed at 7:30 because I'm done and I want them asleep. And so I would control and manipulate and coerce them to get them into bed because I needed them to go to bed. And oftentimes when we went to bed, it was horrible. I felt terrible. I was yelling and screaming and shutting doors on crying kids. And that was one of the big places where I really wanted to learn. When I started this ideology was I didn't want the bedtime to feel like that. I didn't want going to school to feel like that anymore. And that was something I worked really hard on. But part of it was letting go of the control and getting to be more like these people that I so envied. And I don't know if it was their child's temperament or if it was their temperament. Like if my temperament had been more relaxed, if my temperament had been more, flexible and less concerned about when my kids go to bed and less control, would it have flowed more organically? Would it have felt better? Would they've gone to bed at 8, but would it have been an easier 8? I don't know. All I know is that now I really help people. And I wish I would have started earlier. I really help people to just start thinking about these ideas. It doesn't mean you have to do it right now and all of it has to happen today, but just start thinking about what do you want for your children? What kind of control can you give them? And where do you want them to learn about themselves? Where do you want them to learn about sleep and food and homework and the things that they actually can be in control of if a child is old enough to have homework, then they're old enough to decide if they want to turn it in or not. If a child is old enough to take a shower on their own, then they're also old enough to decide when and how they take that shower. Again, with Pia, it's so funny because you would think it would be Esme, but it's Pia. Pia really didn't want to take showers. Those were the two things. I went cold turkey. And I've talked about it before, but I did the showering and the bedtime all together. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm not going to fight with this kid about these things anymore. It's not worth it. If she wants to be dirty, okay, be dirty. By goodness, she was dirty, real dirty for a while, and she dances and she didn't take the shower even after dance. And it took her a minute to figure out what it felt like to be dirty because I was so controlling around it that it was a non-negotiable, like this woman said in IG. And she said, and I felt the same way. I totally understand how this woman feels. Yeah, it was non-negotiable. You have to take a shower before you go to bed. You cannot get into your clean sheets with a dirty body. Oh, she did. She got in the clean sheets with a dirty body. And I cringed, oh my God, I can't believe she did that. And then she got in those dirty sheets with the clean body. It was all messed up. But now the kid takes 2 showers a day. So that's what I'm saying. Like, can we let them fail? Can we let them get there? And can we give them real choices in their lives? Then I think what all these experts and where this idea of choice came from is a great place. But are you using the choices to your best ability? Are you using them to actually give your children a place to assert themselves and have control? Or is it just a facade? You could be well-meaning in this, and I'm sure everyone is, but is it achieving what you're setting out to achieve? And is it actually achieving what the experts, some of these neurodivergent experts, is it achieving what they actually believe? And I think in some cases, probably yes. And in other cases, probably not. So let's do better than just offering broccoli or Brussels sprouts. Do you want to have vegetables tonight, or are we skipping it? And people say, well, what if they skip it every night? Well, what if they skip it every night? How are we going to get them to eat their vegetables? That's a whole different discussion, but obviously connection, right? Okay. I hope this was helpful. If you haven't found my book, Unpunished, it might be a good thing to check out. You can find it at unpunishedbook.com, or you can find Audible on Amazon. Thanks for joining me on the Peace and Parenting podcast. I hope this was helpful, and I will see y'all next time.